Hello and welcome aboard, everybody. In today's video, I'm joined by International Master Georgi Orlov. He has a rating of over 2,500, making him among the top 100 players in the entire nation. So pretty incredible stuff. He definitely knows a thing or two about chess, and today he'll be showing us a miniature played by Mikhail Tal. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and give the floor to him.
All right. Well, it's always exciting to review the game of Mikhail Tal, the magician from Riga, as they call him. He played the white side of the dragon in this game. I had a privilege of meeting this gentleman over the chessboard. Unfortunately, I did lose, but I did have a winning position. Probably one of these days, I'd like to show that game and kind of cry my river about missing the opportunity of defeating the legend. But
We'd
it
love
was
to
an
see
interesting game.
Yeah.
And I could only say, well, Tal Benko once upon a time said, Tal hypnotizes his opponents into making bad moves.
Wow.
And actually, Benko was wearing dark glasses when he played Tal all the time to avoid being hypnotized, but it didn't really help him that much. He lost every game anyway. So
he's a legend for sure.
He's a legend, yes. He was quite a character, and was actually a very pleasant gentleman. When he analyzed the game with me, he was very cordial and not at all snobbish, and actually kind of a really, really nice guy. So everybody liked him. So on this occasion here, he's white and plays against famous Dragon. And Dragon is, of course, perennial favorite of all the young players, of all the excitement and tactics that it brings into it. Now, I can say that of all the theory that has been developed over the years, I think it's been established that castling is probably best right here by many different reasons. And one of the reasons is Black needs to wait as to where White ends up castling and whether he moves the light squared bishop or not. For instance, here, this is a very popular move. And in this position, Black has more or less two variations. It can take on d4 and play bishop e6 with the idea followed up by queen a5. Usually this is how they do it. Queen c7 first to avoid a famous discovery. Then happens after queen a5 and knight d5. And suddenly after queen d2, there is a tiny bit of intermediate check that actually nets White a pawn.
Right.
So that's why he has to go queen c7. And once he goes queen c7, at that point, White usually plays g4. He goes rook c8, h4, and then he goes queen a5. So again, a very popular position in this variation. White usually plays something like h5, Black goes rook b8, and so on. So a complicated position. White also needs to pay attention to rook c3 check, which can also be a very dangerous situation. So
rook c3 check? What are you talking about?
I mean, rook c3 and queen a2 check.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, queen
so
a2,
I think
yeah.
in this position, he needs to do something like this first to stop rook c3, rook b8, h5, b5, and so on. I think memory serves me well. This is the best move. Or maybe take on g5 and then queen g5.
Interesting.
A very complicated position, though. Even though I've studied this a fair number of times, I still feel like there's a lot of things here that are very tricky. So another line here is called Yugoslav attack, and that's where White actually plays bishop c4. And after that move, bishop goes to d7 normally, castle, rook c8, setting up another discovery. And I've seen more than my fair share of blunders here. White plays h4, and now the discovery suddenly strikes. Now you can't take with the bishop. Why? Well, your bishop c4 is unguarded. So you have to go queen d4 and knight g4, another discovery. Discovery upon discovery upon discovery that ends up in a complete disaster for White. You can see that this position is pretty much lost. So therefore, castling is a very important move to wait for that.
Would rook takes work there too instead of knight takes e3?
I suppose, but the knight on g4 is unguarded.
Oh, right.
Look at that too. So therefore, when he actually goes bishop d7, he kind of commits to playing rook c8, but when the bishop didn't move to c4 yet, this maneuver rook c8 knight e5 actually ends up losing black a lot of time. So after queenside castle, he played queen a5.
And tempo is so crucial in opposite side castling situations.
Yes, a lot of times an extra move that you have to waste ends up setting you back in your attack and gives your opponent a decisive move. Like for instance here, let's say you go rook c8. Normally, white plays something like this. Knight goes to e5, h5, knight goes to c4, bishop takes, rook takes. You can see that in this position, it takes black quite a bit of time to actually set up this attack. And now if he castles, he probably is just going to get checkmated in a couple of moves because the h file is pretty much open. And at the same time, this move would just basically kill the bishop pretty much, sitting up to f8, knock off the bishop and the rook of the game. So this is probably a lost position already. So bishop d7 is basically, for the lack of the better term, is a mistake. Castling is much better. So queen a5, h4 or g4 usually is played here. In this case, Tal played king b1 and rook c8, and then he goes g4. Now, why g4 and not h4 is relatively obvious, because if you play h4, there is a possibility of h5. And now you just don't have the push that you normally have. Then you have to prepare g4 to open the king side up, but then it's going to require a sack of a pawn or even two, and that's going to be a different ball game. So g4 is kind of a move expecting that. And now if you play h5, first he can take, second he can play g5, and so on. So what does black do in this position? He's already fairly tough, but he probably doesn't feel any particular pressure yet. So he goes h6 to stop g5, pawn goes to h4, and now the move that I just don't understand completely because it doesn't fit with anything he's doing. So he goes a6. Obviously, if you wanted to play a6, b5, he could have done that couple of moves earlier and it would make more sense then. Now it's just simply a waste of time, but he probably didn't anticipate the trouble that he was facing. Now, earlier I mentioned that Tal defeated many players by attacking their castling, not a castling position, but attacking the king in the center when the king is uncastled. And here, that's a typical case, even though it's not obvious what danger may lie for the king. Sometimes danger when you're uncastled comes from the area you did not expect, and that's what happened in this game. So Tal played bishop e2, and black finally played his knight e5, preparing knight c4, which is a standard dragon attack. And here, believe it or not, the game was over in just a few moves. Pawn went to g5, and black didn't anticipate any trouble. He took on g5, pawn took on g5, and he took on h1, thinking that all is well. You know, rook is going to probably take, he was thinking. He's going to play knight h5. A pawn might go to f4, try to kind of kick the knight out and win h5. But then the knight gets to c4, and all is more or less well, because if you take on c4, rook takes c4, knight on h5 survived the attack. And there's no obvious danger to black's king. And there's also knight g3 possibility hanging there at some point. The king can just probably go to f8 and g8 and do what we call hand castling. So white probably did not anticipate any trouble in this situation until he probably saw the next move. The next move was g takes f6. And at first, this looks like some sort of touch move.
Yeah.
Like, you know, these days you play chess online, you accidentally touch a piece and it moves. And that's what it kind of looks like. Like, what's the story here? He's just going to take the rook with a check. And then on the next turn, he's going to take f6. It was a great position. But now you can see where the danger could potentially lie for the king. The back rank here is actually now unguarded with the rook gone. So here it comes. Knight takes d1.
Threat of queen takes a5 now.
Threatening the bishop while opening up a new one on a5. Obviously, there's no time to move the queen anywhere. Bishop is hanging, and no time to take the pawn. So you have to take the queen. And then a very nice intermediate move. F takes g7.
I love it. He says, you can have the queen. I'm going to make another one.
And right now, there's a mate on g8. And I think the only move is either moving the bishop or moving to e6. And in that case, the queen could still promote there. So let's say you play e6. What do we do here? Probably realistically, we can simply just play check, king up. And then at that moment here, I think our d1 is protected, e2 is protected, e3 is protected, d4 is protected. A remarkable position with so many pieces for the queen to take. Not even one of them is really available.
Yeah.
So after queen takes c8, black is down 2 pieces. And then the very best outcome, you can probably narrow it down a little bit to 1 piece down, but still a completely lost position. So Tao's opponent actually resigned after f takes g7.
Incredible.
Facing pretty much an inevitable giant material loss. I cannot really think of what else he could do really here. Is bishop a4 a possibility? I guess it is, but it doesn't really change the outcome. I think we can simply do this same promotion, capture c8 with check. And here we actually win even more pieces.
Right.
So, total disaster that came unexpectedly. What was his last straw, so to say? Obviously, allowing g5 was probably a bad idea to begin with. Somewhere here, he probably should have felt that something bad is happening and something bad is coming. I don't know if this would save him, but I would definitely consider taking a couple of pieces off the board and playing bishop e6, kind of resorting to more or less standard threat of rook takes c3, something takes c3, queen takes a2, check. This would probably not change the outcome of the game overall. It's still going to be a position where black is struggling, but it's definitely not a checkmate anymore.
Right.
So a very nice victory by Mr. Tao, a spectacular sack, very unexpected. I bet you his opponent pretty much fell out of a chair after he saw it.
I bet, yeah.
So great game. And again, a reminder that in the opening, you really need to castle if you want to stay in a game.
Right. And in sharp positions, too. It's just crucial to really pay attention to each move and not make any inaccuracies. I mean, this was an 18-move game, you know? I mean, a miniature is a game that's 25 moves or less. You know, he skunked him, basically. So
yeah, it was a very nice win. I enjoyed the game.
Yeah.
Actually, first I got introduced to this position by working on some chess puzzle book. I saw that in the puzzle. And then I did a little bit more research and I found the game. It was actually very exciting to see the entire game.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you so much. I know you got to run. I really appreciate your time and looking forward to doing more of these.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, sure thing.